Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Emily Moyer. Dani Katz is with me. It has been a few weeks. I'm in a new location. Dani has a new shirt. It's words number 41. Dani, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Welcome to your new time zone.
Thank you. Like, it's interesting. It's like on a lot of it is like coming home. Like, Austin is kind of my home in a different way than Los Angeles is my home. Like, obviously Los Angeles is where I'm born, raised, my family is there. I obviously do have a very close tie-in with that city, but Austin was the first place that people ever really liked me. And so it's home on in a different way. So it's been kind of like coming back, but then on the flip side, it's changed quite a bit. Some for the good, some for it's more challenging, right? And it's just so different in terms of like how busy and popular, like you can't, like it's crazy. You cannot get, if you don't have a reservation at the restaurant, you're waiting an hour and a half or 2 hours almost everywhere, right? Like, which is amazing for the economy right now, right? And especially compared to the ghost town we've been living in, whatnot. But it's an adjustment because I used to just be able to stroll in wherever I wanted, anywhere. And, okay, maybe you'll have to wait 5 minutes if it's Friday night or something like that. But, so there's lots of changes, but it's good to be here. And yeah, so I'm in my new place. I haven't figured out exactly what my recording setup is going to be. So we're in kind of makeshift recording, and I have terrible hair today because I'm actually mid-exercise. I didn't have time to do full exercise before the show. So I was like, okay, I'll stay in my workout clothes and go finish my exercise.
I'm also mid-exercise, but I put on pants in between.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to go back. I don't know if I'm going to go back out to the trail again or go upstairs to the gym. It's nice to have both options now, right? So
options. You're living such an abundant life.
And even when you're in the gym here, you're looking at the lake. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, so it's good. So anyway, yeah, so I'm adjusting to my new spot. It's a little like hard to get back in the swing of things, but everything is good. And you have a new shirt that you're going to tell us about.
I have.
And he's also in a new place that she was in last time, but we were on a time crunch, so we didn't talk about it.
And I'm living on a golf course in a gated community. It's so bougie and surreal, very peaceful, but very bizarre.
It isn't. Golf courses are interesting. Like my stepbrother's dad had a house on a golf course in Palm Springs, and it is like it's one of those things like you don't really think about that, but when you get there, it's like, okay, this is a regular house, but there's something weird about being on a golf course, and you're just I don't know, it's interesting. So yeah,
it's super weird, and it kind of feels like we all live on a lake because everyone's like around the golf course, and it's even like sandy, like a beach to get to, but it's fun. Like I have great dance parties when people aren't golfing.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. All right. So we know about your golf course, now about your shirt. It looks kind of like a golfing shirt.
Totally, very much like a golfing shirt. This was a gift from my friend Molly. The V is for virtue signaling, which saves me the hassle of having to wear a mask or choose pronouns. It's just really easy to be virtue signaling all the time.
I was like, was it for Vendetta or what is it? Like the movie V for Vendetta.
Everyone knows how virtuous I can act like a total fucktard.
But you're virtuous.
But I'm virtuous because of the optics, just like every other moron.
It's like your scarlet letter of virtue saying.
Totally.
Well, that's cool. And it does look like an appropriate shirt for a golf course, especially if you have like some like white capris to wear with it and some Keds or something like that.
That's what I've got going on down here.
You either look like your baby from Dirty Dancing or like you're ready for the golf course.
Yeah. No one puts baby in a corner.
But she does carry a watermelon, so there you go. Anywho, so all right, so it's been a couple of weeks, and we will be back. I think maybe the next episode we'll do with Robert or whatnot, and pick back up on where we left off with Timothy Leary. But today we thought we would just kind of catch up on some of the things that have been going on and what we're noticing, and we're going to do an afterwards. So there'll be some stuff that I want to play a clip, and you can't really do that on the tube here. So. That'll be over in Afterwords after the show. But anyway, where do you want to start? Did you want to talk a little bit about Austin, since there's been so much like social energy and eyes on Austin kind of stuff?
Yeah, stuff on Austin.
All right. So my thing here is to try and like I decided when I got here that like I'm trying to look at things with like very neutral eyes for everything, right? Not just the said, virus situation or whatever, but like, there's a lot of attention here as far as tech and esoterics and things like this. Like people are looking at this going, what's going on here? And I just, it's kind of one of these things that like before in life, we just thought everything was what it appeared to be, and that was wrong. And then we have a certain level of awakening, and then everything looks conspiratorial or nefarious. And while that's true to some extent, it also like paints everything from like what in one light, right? And so you miss other possibilities. And it's almost gotten to the point to me where I'm starting to think that the conspiracies are a distraction too, right? Right? I mean, like we have to be aware that yes, that it's not that it's not happening, but it's like they know, like let's just say there's like an imaginary wonderland that like can only hold 300 people, right? And so like you definitely don't want the masses there, so you want them believing total bullshit. But then of the people that like get over believing bullshit, like you still can't fit all of them into the magical 300 person kingdom, right? And so you have to give them something to get stuck on that will keep them really busy for a long time. And like conspiracy information, like is whether you like have them caught at being conspiracy theorists and constantly trying to convince their totally sleeping friends of things, or whether you have them caught in the rap of just thinking everything is nefarious or everything is something being done to you. That's a place that you end up spending a lot of energy. So you kind of never cross over the next barrier into whatever the said magical wonderland is, right?
Yeah, I see conspiracy, like that conspiracy consciousness and that conspiracy loop is like Burning Man. Like it's a place to take brilliant minds and distract them instead of having them move society forward in a healthy way.
That's exactly right. It's perfect, right? Okay. And so I'm trying to like, it's kind of like when driving, right? You want to be looking ahead mostly, and also acknowledging what's in the right and left-hand side view mirrors and the rear view mirror. But I feel like it's one of those other three mirrors that we usually get caught up in, and we can't see actually something that's right in front of our face then. And right. Or we've been convinced that the thing in front of our face must be nefarious because everything else is. And so it's more important to pay attention to what's going on off in the periphery. And then it can be hidden in plain sight. Right. So anyway, so I'm trying to be like neutral. Like it's not as challenging as it would have been years ago for me because I'm largely there already. But sometimes it's like, yeah, that's just fucking ridiculous. I just can't even, with that. So coming here, it's like, okay, like I'm well aware that there is the belief. So you have Texas that people believe is like a bastion of freedom during these crazy times. And then you have Austin, which people think is a bastion of liberal insanity inside of a place that supposedly has freedom, right? And neither of those things, from my assessment so far here, are true, right? So like, it's all over Texas. People are still like wearing the costume, right? It's all over the place. I couldn't believe some of the small towns that you would think of as gun-toting redneck kind of places that had all the same rules as that they have in the big city in LA or whatever. I was kind of shocked at that, right? And then, here in Austin, which we think of as like, a little Los Angeles or a little New York or something in terms of the liberal ideology of the people, I don't know, right? So like there's like most places here, like because there's still a mandate passed in Austin, even though it's been lifted by the governor supposedly in the rest of the state. Like, so all the places still have the sign at the front and people, playing the game. But I'd say that far more places that I go to, it's actually very relaxed. Like once you kind of get back past the song and dance at the front door, like nobody seems really worried about it. The people who work there, the other customers. I mean, every once in a while you see someone who's obviously a hypochondriac or like a control freak or whatever, but it's like actually quite a small number. I'd say like, it's pretty small. And then every once in a while you'll trip into a place where it's like they're still caught back in March of 2020, where it's like, oh my God, right? But it's like localized to that place. And it's very easy to get, like, that's the anomaly, right? And then, so So yeah, so it's fairly relaxed here, which I'm kind of, I thought it was going to be more uptight. I thought there was going to be like in the building that we're in here, like almost nobody ever wears it around kind of thing. Like you see people who are here looking at apartments because it's a newer building and the person taking them around will be wearing it and they'll be wearing it, but people who live here are for the most part not, you know what I mean? And so like that was a relief. I was kind of afraid that it might be really tense here and nobody wears it in the gym or at the pool. It's very relaxed. So that's been really great. And out on the trail, many more people, like it's 90%, faces not wearing masks. And that's a difference than Los Angeles, right? So that's been kind of interesting. And then even like, there's this street that when we were visiting here the last couple of times, we spent a lot of time on. It's over in East Austin, which is like one of the most popular, fastest growing gentrifying areas in the entire world right now. And it is at least thought of and appears to be at first glance like incredibly virtue signaling, SJWE, left wing kind of thing, right? But if you like really sink in and pay attention, like Jeff was here, he helped us with the relocation, and I had dropped him and Laura off at this bar and I had to go look for a parking place. And when I came back, he told me he had been like kind of eavesdropping on a conversation that the manager of the bar was having with like someone who, like a friend who obviously knew, who had stopped into the bar. And this is, an area that you'd think of as being super like woke and, super like virtue signaling. He's like, yeah, dude, we're over this fucking dumb shit, right? Like this, like, we're going to give it a couple more weeks and then, but we're ready to be done. Like our bar is busy and we want to like go at it and we can't do it with these masks on. This is just fucking ridiculous. So we're giving it a couple more weeks. And then if this shit doesn't stop, everyone on the street is in agreement, except for one, there's only one restaurant on the street where the people are like super like mask Nazis and whatever. Everyone else is willing to band together and just be like, we're not doing this anymore. And so like, I was like very surprised to hear that there. If I'd heard that maybe in like a part of town that is more like maybe old money and Republican or something like that, I wouldn't have been as surprised, but you wouldn't have bars. So it was like, okay, like it really isn't in any way accurate to like classify what's actually going on here based on the way that we perceive the city, how the media and culture is presenting it. It's kind of different. Then on the flip side, and this is the part that is like highly disturbing to me, right? So I get here. Oh, and then I do want to talk about one other thing related to that in a second, but I was dying to go to a party when I get here, right? Because there hasn't been any parties in Los Angeles, and here you're going to have everything open at 100%. So my friend was playing at like a very like after hours undergroundy thing last weekend, and I went. There was hardly anybody there. It was a really cool place. There was a few other parties going on there as well, some with more people, and that seems to be like there's no rules. Like it seems like everyone's doing what they want. Cool, but it's a very sort of small underground, which is what I like. But the underground here is different than the underground in LA. The underground in LA is much more sophisticated at this point. It used to be here, but that kind of fell off and things got pretty corporatized in the dance music scene here. So I'm like, okay, like I guess if I want to like hear a big sound system and get to like have some energy and see a good DJ or whatever, I'm going to have to go to some slightly more corporate kind of event. I'm going to have to go to a club or a festival for right now because they're, whatever. So I'm looking around and there's some club events that like most of them are selling out because there's not too many of them and nothing I'm super interested, but I'm like, oh, okay, there's this music festival. I don't actually like festivals anymore. It's more commercial generally than what I like, but this one actually has people that I would like to hear. Like there's a few people I really like on the lineup. Maybe I'll go. So I click on it and it's like, and these are people that like, there's like a little younger than the generation I was really involved in with partying here in Austin. But I know some of these people, like they were starting to come up, like, like they were some of the young kids starting to throw parties when, whatnot. And they're nice and whatever. But literally I click on the event and it's like, okay, we're going to have this event in May, but we're not subject to Governor Abbott's new, COVID passports laws. So you'll have to show proof of vaccine or submit to rapid testing at the door, wear a mask the whole time and dance in a pod. And I was just like, what the ever loving fuck? So this really started me like, I fully expected this for things like Coachella and like some of the really large festivals or even Burning Man or something like that. But I was a little surprised to find that here because you don't have to. I wouldn't think that they would submit to that expense if you don't have to, right? In California, they may make that some kind of law or whatever. Here, it's like, no, you don't have to. So why would you, right? But I was like, okay. And so, and like all the people, like people in the dance music scene everywhere, like this is what's crazy to me, is like the dance music scene at one point, whether it was created or not, was some kind of counterculture thing. But at this point, it is completely captured. I have not seen anybody with any kind of significant following or influence speak out against any of this. And to speak out, I don't mean you have to be in line with you and I, where you're like, this is nonsense, but like, these are people that say they're pro-choice.
Exactly.
These are people that used to eat 6 hits of acid, eat 3 pills, stay up for 4 days, and drive home in the morning after the party and not be concerned with who they might hurt. Right. And suddenly, like, they're gonna, like, you know, it's like we're testing people's biological content before they like. So, but this is the part that's crazy to me, right? So they're doing rapid testing for COVID, and as long as you're COVID negative, you can go in. But what if you have the chickenpox? What if you have
Hold on. Have they come up with a test that is actually a diagnostic? Have they actually isolated this supposed thing? Like, do they know something we don't? Because when people say they're testing for COVID-19, I'm like, what fictional reality are you living in? I'll submit to a test when you can isolate it and show me it exists and you have a diagnostic, but who are we kidding? I wouldn't.
But there's not even like, I don't expect these people to actually know things. I would just expect these people to like, I do what I want. Like, I want freedom. I want to stay up all night party, right? So it's just like, so I'm not asking them to understand this stuff. I'm just being like, this is stupid. Like, this is a waste of money. It's a waste of time, right? It's gonna, whatever it is. But here's the other part. So you and I understand, no, there's no test that it's a true test because there's no isolation. We already know. But like, so as long as one test's negative for that, they can go in there with chickenpox, that's fine. They can go in there with bioweapon in their pocket, that's fine. They can go in there with venereal disease and kiss 3 women or whatever the fuck it is, right? So it's like, how does, like, this is hilarious, right? Like,
you're inviting logic into a situation where there is no logic,
right?
You know?
But that's how, and this is why I can't even be mad. Like, I can't even be like, gosh, I'm so disappointed. Like, this is just the level of lunacy that people are like one day they're going to hopefully look back and go, I can't believe I did such a dumb, stupid thing. Right.
The illusion is crazy. Like, you're in the free state and people are rebelling,
but
forcing their slave masters' rules. It's fucking asinine.
I mean, the whole thing is, you know, like, it goes against, in my opinion, everything that like they once said they believed. Now, the only thing I can figure out is like, there was a time when I felt very sort of kicked out by both Austin at a time and also kicked out by the dance music scene in general, right? And I was just basically going to parties by myself and do right kind of thing, right? The reason like I struggled socially during periods of time in this, you know, is because the mind control just didn't work on me then. And even though I didn't know it as mind control then, like I didn't know when that started happening, all the things I know now, like it was the same thing. I just was not part of the board. Right. And these people are, I mean, now my guess would be there are some people that feel a little differently, but like, you know, they're afraid to speak out for their DJing career or for whatever it is. But I'm like this, I did bring this up to my friend who's a DJ and who's got a completely different opinion about all this stuff than you and I do, but I'm okay with it because she's okay with mine. She doesn't try and pressure me to adapt to hers. Cool. Right. But she did think my point about the chickenpox was valid and that should be a question that should be asked is if we're going to test for one disease, shouldn't we be testing for all of them?
Well, what I go to with that shit is back when the AIDS crisis was such a big deal and there was all this discrimination and people not wanting to touch people with AIDS. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. But I think because I've heard you say this about the dance community for a while now, and my friend Jules, who's also in that community, she has the same perspective. And I think it's the partisan mind poisoning. It's because they're associating this freedom with Republicans in TDS. And I feel like that's the flip for the EDM community.
Well,
is the partisan.
What's interesting is here in Texas, it wasn't always like this wasn't always a left-leaning scene. Like in LA, it was always a left-leaning scene.
Yeah.
But here in Austin, I would say like a lot of the people, like when I first landed here in 1999, there was lots of people who were in the military who used to come to parties here. There was lots of people that I would consider like, you know, sort of libertarian or Ross Perot types that were in the party scene.
Our society wasn't split the way it is. Like
Correct.
Republicans weren't demonized the way they've been demonized these past 5 years.
Correct. But the old guard in Austin, it's what's interesting to me. It's not surprising to me that the newer generation is that this is going on, but what's surprising to me is that there's not a level of common sense in the older guard. And common sense doesn't have to mean that we agree about everything, but that like, wait a second, like this seems to go oppose what we thought before. Let's at least have a conversation about it. Now, the other thing is, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and you brought this up really early on in the whole thing last year, and I always thought this was a good point, but like it hadn't sort of seeped into my cells. You know, when you know something on an intellectual level, and then you know it like in every cell of your body. And that was a point about people who are pro-choice. Right. And like this whole, like, also to your point about the HIV thing, it's like we're going to have leper colonies now. Right.
Pretty
like that. Right. Yeah. Okay. So that was what
happened with the freaking volcano. Those people just have to die of lava immersion.
Let's talk about that in a second, because that actually relates to something that we read recently. But, you know, so where was I going with this? Oh, okay. So the pro-choice thing, right? So I'm 100% sure that 99% of the people that are going to go to this event, that think this is either think this is a good idea or are okay with it, right? They are anti the idea of papers, please. So this is both, this goes both to papers, please, and to pro-choice, right? So those people are against asking undocumented workers for their licenses, or undocumented people for their ID, which they should, in my opinion, they should be. I'm a real anarchist, right? I'm not for papers, please of any kind. And this is papers, please, right?
They're also against voter ID.
Right. Correct. Okay. So they're against, right? So you either are against papers, please, or you're not. There's not one situation where papers, like if the violation of your papers, it's a violation, right? Kind of thing. Right. So there's that, but then there's also this pro-choice thing. And if their argument, I'm a person who I am pro-choice, but anti-abortion. And what that means to me is I don't think every situation is unique, and only the person who's in it knows what the right thing to do is. But the idea of abortion for me, based on some of my own personal experiences that I've had in my life, I think it's probably led to a lot of problems that we have because, you know, whatever. So I'm anti-abortion, but I'm not for making the choice for you, right? I think for me, abortions are a no, right? And I think somebody else, only that person knows their social, political, health, spiritual, whatever their situation is, and they need to decide for themselves, right?
I don't even think that makes you anti-abortion. I think that comes under the umbrella of pro-choice, and you have your own personal choice.
I don't like the idea of abortion, but I don't like the idea of somebody telling me I can't have one if I want one, right? So, okay. So like if these people are both against asking people for their papers in any other circumstance than this, and they're also for like a person should be able to terminate someone else's life just to maintain their own bodily integrity, right? Okay, so if you're for that, then
not only that, because that movement also believes that the government should pay for it.
Well, like let's just even forget about that part for a second. But yeah.
But I mean, I think when it goes to that level where they try to make it a constitutional right, like they're so extreme about that right to kill babies.
Correct.
So I did want to presence that.
Right. So like they're okay. Like a woman's bodily integrity is so important that that it's more important than another life. Right. Okay. Well, my bodily integrity is at least that important to me. Right. So if I can choose to not have a baby in myself, can't I also choose not to have a chemical cocktail of poison in my body? Right.
No, you can't, because the government knows better.
Right. So, but I mean, this is the kind of thing that like nobody's quite thinking of that. And one of the things I've noticed is everybody, and this was why it was brilliant. Like if these people who do this shit weren't so sick, I could admire their brilliance, but it's sick. Is like, for some reason, everybody thinks that medical stuff is a different case, right? Oh, but this is different. Like the government couldn't control the pandemic, or right? This is a health thing. This is a safety thing. I'm like, you fucking, like, none of the other shit worked, right? The false flag shootings didn't work. The false flag terrorism stuff didn't work or whatever, because people could like see, because it did, like this scary thing of like a virus or a pandemic or whatever puts people into this mindset that like, oh, when it has to do with medical stuff or health, that is a different thing than all of the other intrusions. It's weird.
Again, I disagree, because I feel like you're giving the public too much credit in alleging that they're thinking.
Right.
Not
There's
thinking.
that. Right.
If they were thinking, they would know that there isn't a pandemic, that this is not how viruses are transmitted.
Right.
Like, this is not thought. Everything that you're saying to me is just more and more proof that this is a mind control site.
Totally. Oh, I'm 100% with you, but so were all the other things, right? So were the 9/11, so were the Sandy Hook and all that kind of stuff, right?
But I also disagree that those aren't working. They are, I mean, what's going on with the latest false flag fucking nonsense, and now our fake never elected president is trying to rescind people's second, like, it is all working. It's just all working on different levels and layers at a different pace, converging for the same.
It hasn't been, but it hasn't, but it hasn't worked to the level of getting to the point of creating a two-tiered society in terms of what you'll have access to.
Oh yeah, I mean, Bain and Company really pulled out the stops in designing this one. They taken it to a new level of nefarious genius, for sure.
Yeah, because it is like the thing that people are afraid of more than anything is death. Right?
Death / lack of social acceptance, because we can't deny that is what's driving this. And so many people who don't believe in the narrative and who don't believe in vaccines, but because they're afraid of vaccine passports, they're afraid of not being able to travel, are also willingly going along with it. So yes, it's fear of death, and it's also fear of not being socially
it's that double up of them, right? So they created the fear of the virus or whatever, and then they backed it up with social enforcement, right? Like if they had just said, we want you to wear masks so we can practice perfecting our facial recognition software, like that would have been a harder sell, right? There would have been a few people who are like gung-ho about that, but it would probably have been a slightly different set than the ones that are doing it now, right? But this was, they had tried all this other stuff, and this was the one that finally delivered because I've never heard so many people say just in case as they do with this one, right? Like my dad never was like, well, just in case, we better not leave the house in case someone out there has a gun. But
I hear the just in case, and when I hear the just in case, it goes to like, okay, so just in case the laws of nature no longer apply. Okay, so let's go with just in case. And what I say to people who throw that is, then are you drinking lemon water? Like, if you're really afraid of a virus, are you taking care of your system in a responsible way?
Right. No.
The answer is 100% no.
Right. Yeah. No, none of this makes any sense. Right. But there was something about this one that struck at a primal fear that even fears of like bombs going off in buildings and guns going off in schools doesn't scratch at. Right. Because those still seem like anomalous kinds of events. But people like getting sick seems like something that can happen to anyone, right?
Well, and it's also the theater around it of like, you know, the morgue set up in front of hospitals and all of the theatrics and the set design really, you know, drove it in.
It was really good. Yeah, it was really good. So
here's my question. Did you reach out to the festival promoters and tell them to go fuck themselves?
No, like I haven't even I'm more humored by this than I am upset about it. Right. And so like, I think the better, like, I feel like there's a way to handle this that is humorous that will get me farther than just rage. Right. And so I'm kind of trying to understand what that is. I haven't been here long enough. I haven't been out socially enough to kind of observe all the things that are going on. Like I can make a blanket assessment then, like, are we going to test for chickenpox too? But like, until I've been around a couple of times at some smaller events here and seen like what kind of cuckoo shit people are doing that I should have a question about or whatever. So I'm going to handle this with humor, right? Because like, you know, I'm going to handle it with humor just because I find that greases the skids much better than rage does.
100%. But I also feel like because the fucktards are using the businesses as their body armor to do their bidding for them, it's about the money. So when I've, like I'm on mailing lists, like Botanica Restaurant in LA sent out an email saying, we're proud to announce that we're open and our entire staff has been vaccinated. So I feel like it's important for them to know that they're going to lose my money.
Right.
And they're going to lose money. So that's been my response, and not in a rude way, but to let them know, okay, then I'm never coming to your restaurant again. You are committing human rights violations because this is not FDA approved. You are breaking international human rights laws.
Yeah.
And I don't want to support you, and I have a big mouth, and I'm going to tell everyone I know not to support you. And so I feel like that's a little thing I can do, because if they start to lose money from this, then maybe they'll, something will kick in, some degree of sanity. I don't know.
So I think I first of all, I've never been to an event of this person's before, so it's not like I was a customer.
Right.
I know this person vaguely because someone I used to work with was friends with him back when he was like a teenager, right? So I think like the better tact with this person. So like, at that time, I was like a little bit of an older person in the scene, and, people like, it was like, I was kind of known around here that I've been gone for a long time. This person might remember me because I worked with this friend. So it's more like, I'll walk up to him when I see him standing outside of event promoting or when he's at the bar somewhere or whatever. And just like, have a conversation with him. But yes, I understand, like there's places that I won't go that I used to frequent, that I was a regular customer of. This is a little bit different case. And I'm trying to decide, like, I'm playing with how I respond to these things to see what gets me the farthest. But it is funny to me, like, so I was at, right before we left, we had brunch with Sonia, right? And she was telling me, she made that documentary years ago called The Business of Disease, which is like how I ended up meeting Anne and even getting down the line of things that I'm down, right? It was based on Sonia's documentary. And she's like shocked at how many people who were in her documentary, which is all about natural health, who have chosen to get the vaccine, right? So it's kind of crazy.
What?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But the other thing is, she was telling me about someone she knows also from the natural health community. I don't know whether this person or not was in her film or whatever, who like was going back and forth about it, right? And then ultimately decided to get it. I don't know if it was like a cave to social pressure or what it was, but then was like, I got it, and it was the most spiritual experience of my life. I was like, yeah, right. But this is the thing you're talking about. I've never been to Botanica. I don't know what
my
it is.
My heart is literally hurting right now. Literally, right. Pain just shot through my heart hearing that.
Right. So I'm assuming, I don't know the restaurant you're speaking of, but I'm assuming it's like
your kind of restaurant. It's like, it's in Silver Lake. They have like this great mezcal menu. It's like a little bit higher end, hipstery.
Right. Okay. But they probably have pretty clean food there too, right? Probably very good food, right? Yeah. So it's just funny to me, these people that like, you'd think even if they were like politically in line with being TDS, right? That like they wouldn't be willing, the one thing they wouldn't be willing to compromise is their bodily integrity. Like that was the thing that for so many years libertarians and far lefties agreed on, where they would like meet out back and have a smoke, have a pot smoke together, right, at the raw milk farmer's house, right, kind of thing. They were so far to the sides that they met around back, right? And so that seems to, like, this is why I was saying that this is the best one they've ever done, because they were able to break that connection.
Totally. Yeah, these people, because I have in my wellness world, I'm seeing people who I never thought would go there. And it's 100% the social pressure. And I can see the cognitive dissonance in them, because there are some people I know who they know it would destroy their brand. So they're kind of not really talking about it. And I can see the sort of break in integrity kind of fucking with them. They seem a little bit unhinged.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, I even know people who like are anti all of this, but are getting it anyway because they want to travel or without hassle, or right, or because one of their parents isn't well and is in and out of the hospital and they can't go visit their parents in the hospital, whatever. And I'm just like, okay, so this is like, that's what I'm saying. This was the smartest, best designed one. Like, I know people who like won't go somewhere that they can't carry a gun, but will concede to this in order to go in somewhere, right? Kind of thing.
At the inconsistency of like, yeah, we can't trust these people because they're criminals. You look at Moderna's history, you look at Pfizer's history, you look at Fauci's history, which is super public, but then all of a sudden it doesn't apply and you can trust all them now.
Yeah, this there was like a whatever, like the magical alchemical cocktail was to putting this entire thing together. Like it was brilliant. It was gross, but it was brilliant.
It went way back. I mean, they started it, like I could see it when they did the fake measles outbreak in the Orthodox Jew community a few years ago. It's totally where Black Lives Matter and Me Too, all that divide, like they've been really methodical and deliberate. But while we're on the topic, another piece of this that's freaking me out is how it's become like a casual conversation thing with total strangers that they're like, I just got vaccinated. Like that is that is no one's business. Like I just had hemorrhoid surgery and seeing that, like that's become this new social norm. So my automatic when I hear that is your personal medical choices are none of my business. Please don't share with me. Like I don't want to hear this. I'm not going to take it to that level where we just start talking about this bullshit. Oh, look, here's my used tampon. Let's examine it. It's the same thing.
I mean, I think anybody who wants a vaccine should have one. And I think those who don't shouldn't. And it's no one's business. And like it should, like a year out, this is still dominating every conversation, including this one we're having right now, like talking about these topics, right? So like, and like people who know that I'm not into it still feel the need to tell me that they got it. And I'm just like, it's weird, right? But you know what this is kind of like, you know how when people go vote, they get the little thing that says I voted and they walk around the rest of the day with that. Like they should just give those things out so people could go around and feel like they got their gold star and everybody's very good, right? Like it's just so stupid.
I was at the hot springs a few weeks ago and this couple comes in with fluorescent Band-Aids. So it's like, okay, let's say that you did get whatever, you got your injection, you're at the hot spring now. It's been at least 5, 10, 20, like it's in the middle of nowhere. You can take that off now. And the fact that it's fluorescent to draw everyone's attention, I put out a challenge on Instagram a couple weeks ago. I said, hey, I respect your choice for anyone who wants to get it, but I dare you to get it and not post about it on social media and not tell anyone. Do you still want it? Is it still valuable to you if you're not getting virtue signal points for it? Because that's what it's, if we took that off the table, I wonder how many people would do it.
Yeah. I mean, what were people's response to that?
I mean, anyone who doesn't agree with me has unfriended me so long ago that I'm only preaching to the choir.
Speaking of which, I heard you have a new friend on Instagram and he even gave you a nod in our glass bead game the other day.
Oh, yes. I do have a new friend. I love your guys' show so much.
He likes your aesthetic a lot. So one of the things we're doing is people are creating different little glass bead game logos for us that we may put out on things. So if you feel so inspired to create a Sadie version of the glass bead game kind of thing, then like that kind of, we're gonna have some swag and stuff like that. So if you feel so inspired, you'll be rewarded. And he likes you a lot. So he likes that aesthetic.
Yeah, I would totally be honored to pick.
Okay, cool. So anyway, it's just, this is weird. Like this is the new, like, it is weird. It's like, it's Scarlet Letter. It's like, but it's also, if anyone even at this point suggested the fact that we should ostracize people that have HIV, right, then there would be a outpouring, there would be like roaring in the street, right, kind of stuff. And so this is not different.
It's only different in that fewer people are dying of it,
right?
And it's not as lethal.
Right. It's not right. I mean, that's my point with the chicken pox was so one of the things in the beginning, and I appreciated this from this listener because it kept me out of a lot of mess, right? Like when we were all questioning what viruses were and couldn't, like there was these new challenging ideas and whatnot. And maybe this idea that a lot of people had presented this idea that viruses couldn't catch a virus from another person. This person said, well, wait a second. What about chicken pox parties? We used to have that.
I remember that. And I
Right?
remember you pausing and being like, oh, I don't know
Okay,
about
so
that.
I don't actually know anything about viruses. So this is not what I can talk about my opinion on whether I like this or not or whatever, but I don't actually know how viruses work any better than a lot of the people who are telling us that we need to stay inside. So I shouldn't like get into the medical aspect of it. I can get into the personal freedom choice of it all, whatever. So that was really great. And thank you, Arlene. I think it was Marlene. It was Mojo. Thank you, Mojo, for really like helping me to see that I like need to like talk about the things from my tree. My tree has plenty of leaves and branches. I don't need to go into the other tree, right? Kind of thing. But so it wasn't like it wasn't just, you know, I'm just saying chickenpox because that's the first thing that comes to mind, and right. But like actually, if older people get chickenpox, because I actually like I wasn't old. I was like 11 or 12 when I got chickenpox. I had them much worse than my sister had them when she was 6. My mom had chickenpox in her 20s, which then led to immediately being followed up by mononucleosis and Epstein-Barr and all kinds of stuff, right? So chickenpox can actually, if an old person were to get chickenpox, right, and you know, like that could actually be.
But there's no chickenpox vaccine. We're not all required to be vaccinated for chickenpox so that we can be allowed to go grocery shopping.
Right, and like I'm 100% sure that like if my dad got chickenpox right now, it wouldn't be good. Right. So why are we like, this is the whole, like that was my point with that is right. We know that like, I can't think of anything other than a common cold that is more easily transmissible apparently than chickenpox. But like why wouldn't we not? And that's a virus. We're sure that if the viruses are real, that we're sure that chickenpox is one of them. Right. If I still, like I said, I don't know for sure.
Maybe. I don't even know that.
Right, but it is catchable, right? Because when one kid in the class would get it, most of the kids in the class would get it. Some people seem not to get it, but like there was almost always like when one got it, at least a few got it, right? Kind of thing. So something is going on with that, or they're expressing the same thing at the same time. So like, wouldn't the answer, if the answer was chickenpox parties, shouldn't, except for keep the kids away from grandpa, right? If he hasn't had them, wouldn't that be the same thing? And like the rave would be the perfect place to have a chickenpox party because those are all young, healthy people.
That's a great idea.
Right. So maybe we could just do that and we'd have herd immunity immediately and we wouldn't have to worry about the old people anymore because, it would just be over.
You keep trying to apply logic to a situation where logic is not applicable.
Okay. So
no one gives a shit about anyone's health.
Okay. So I'm going to impress you with something that I know that you wouldn't think that I know now. It's one of my channels in human design, logic. So that's why I keep doing it. I found out Robert did my human design profile the other day, and one of my channels is logic.
Yeah, I get it. And this is not a logical situation. None of this would be happening because we could just look at the numbers and the death rate and none of this would ever happen.
Yeah. Right, but the rave scene, dance music scene, they are willing to ascribe to some kinds of magical thinking. Right. And so like, you know, and this, like these people, I'm 100% sure that most of these people who go to parties went to chickenpox parties when they were little. Right. So maybe because it's a party, maybe it would appeal to them. So I'm just going to throw that out there. It's like, let's just like if you had a party in Austin, it's like for a festival with like 40,000 people and it was just like a big COVID party, right? Like that would like, and if everybody who was there who got it went home and gave it to the people in their house, but they stayed away from grandma and grandpa, we'd have herd immunity within a month of the party.
It's very hard for me to talk about this. Like
I'm just talking with you. I'm just like, there is no sense to any of this, and I get it. But it is my nature to try and apply logic. Like even in my magical thinking, there's like a logic and a framework to it. Like there's something.
If there was logic, then we wouldn't be doing anything that Moderna tells us. We wouldn't be using any Moderna products. We wouldn't be using any Pfizer. Like none of this would even be happening if brains were functioning, which clearly they haven't been for quite a long time.
So I'm reading this. It's been a long I get through very little reading a day. So it takes me like a year to get through a book.
Same.
But I'm reading this book, Synchronicity by F. David Pete. Okay. And one of the things that I did not know until I read this is the immune system is important for pattern recognition and for like being able to recognize patterns, right? And so like if you're trying to, you know, completely indoctrinate people into coincidence theory or whatever, right? Then an attack on the immune system is important to that. So that's actually what this is, because these vaccine people are getting our gene therapy that are actually going to confuse the immune system. And so if the immune system is confused, it's not able to recognize patterns. It's being shown with the mRNA vaccine, a fake pattern to try and recognize. It's a mimic. And so it's going to start looking for things that are mimics of real patterns, but not real patterns themselves. And so people will begin to lose the ability to mentally cognate a pattern in a way that provides for pattern recognition, which is part of making sense of reality. Right. And so the way this is described in the book, it's fascinating. I was like, wow, that is exactly what's happening right now. This is an attack on a person's ability to recognize patterns.
Well, it's interesting because it's an escalation of an attack. Sally just sent me an excerpt from something that Scott Adams was talking about, which is that hyperpartisan shit has been causing brain damage, and it inhibits the brain's ability to recognize reality from truth and decipher for itself. So it feels like it's just kind of an up-leveling of the same attack, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that kind of takes us to, like, I told you I was going to tell you about a miracle today. And like the miracle is that, like, I agreed with Eric Weinstein on something, and I found him still mostly annoying, but not totally annoying, for about 8 minutes and 37 seconds.
Okay, I wish we had, in the same way we need a dance for when we agree, I feel like we need some sort of like noise or symbol for when we agree with one of the Weinsteins.
Right? Oh, it would be cute if you could make like a little animated Sadie doing a happy dance we can play it when we agree.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Right? And then we can have, like, maybe you can draw some like caricatures of the Weinstein brothers, and we could like fist bump with them or something. I Sadie could fist bump with them or something. Okay. So when I emerged from my 10 days of not really watching YouTube, because traveling, busy, and also when you're driving cross country, a lot of places you can't get good reception and whatever. So I didn't really watch YouTube for 10 days. And then I thought, oh, I probably missed something. YouTube sucks now. So like the amount of good stuff that used to come up in a few hours that you missed YouTube, now 10 days is about that same amount of stuff, but I couldn't even find anything. So I ended up watching a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast, which I only ever watch occasional clips now because I won't go to that Spotify nonsense, whatever. But there were 2 clips from the show with Eric Weinstein. I was like, oh, fuck Eric Weinstein. All right, let's just check in. And I watched the first one, and it was like, he was basically, he did a little of his usual annoying stuff, but his point was basically, that you have a massive amount of the population defying common sense just in order to oppose Donald Trump at this point, even though he's not president. And Joe Rogan said, but he's not president anymore. And Eric was like, the same thing. The damage has been done. They're like, at this point, if Donald Trump said that, like, exercise was good for you, you'd have people like suggesting we should close gyms down permanently. Oh wait, that already happened. So right. So like, but the way his point, like he what he said was exactly right. Now, I then realized that was a setup for the next clip that I was supposed to watch, but chose not to, where he described how the power structure at Harvard had buried his research, right? Which I'm sure, and that then
out of him never ceases to amaze me.
But it's perfect for the system, because then those people will believe that that's actually like edgy, controversial stuff, right. Which is just
out against TDS, so we can trust him to tell us what to do when they create the intellectual ruling class.
Yeah.
Well, the thing with TDS, because I've had this, some of the people I follow on Instagram will show clips of the new press secretary who's so inappropriately cunty. It's so annoying because it worked with Kaylee because she was so smart and she knew what she was talking about. So I didn't mind that edge, but this one is just a cunt for the sake of being a cunt.
Don't you remember her? She was there in the Obama administration. Don't you remember her?
I don't, because I wasn't paying attention to that administration.
Yeah.
And she's just awful. But it is astounding how many times someone will ask a point blank question about what's happening now, and she will continue to shit talk the former administration. Right. And it happens so often, and people continue to talk about Trump so much that for me, it just kind of solidifies the Q narrative that he's still the president. Otherwise, why are we talking about him still?
Right. So first of all, if you want some hilarious watching, go look up like Jim Lee presses Jen Psaki. Right. Okay. Jim Lee he's a mainstream news reporter, but he is very he's much harder on the sitting price. You know, he's pretty good, and it's so entertaining. Like that used to be the source of a lot of clips on the No Agenda show was listening to Jim Lee like go at it with Jen Psaki. I don't know if it's Jen Psaki or Jen Psaki or whatever the fuck it is, right? Yeah, so she's fucking terrible, and her answer to everything is I'll have to circle back to you. She never fucking answers damn question.
And you think in that position and how much she paid, she is being paid that she could afford to hire a speech coach and get, like, if that's your only job is to be the intermediary between the fake pretend not leader of the free world and the public, then you would learn how to speak. No. So anyway, but I understand your point, and your point also proved my point that TDS exists going both directions. There we go. Dude, I'm not saying that that's the case, but given how often it's just like, why are you talking about him so much? The only reason to be talking about him is if you see him as a threat, if he's in the picture somehow, you know, like, I don't actually buy that. But the more that I hear them say it, the more that it has me wondering.
It is funny to listen to people who go, oh, March 4th, it's going to be revealed. Oh, April 1st. Oh, April 5th. Oh, what, you know, like, like there's apparently some guy that like shows the movement of Air Force One or something like that. Like his name is Monkey Works or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And people keep saying, oh yeah, Trump is still on Air Force One, right? And the Monkey Works thing. And it's like, okay, like when is like the great revealing is going to come in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 20 years, 30 years, 80 years, you know, whatever. Like to me, it's just evidence that maybe that's true, but time doesn't exist, right? And so that it doesn't actually matter when it happens, it's already here, right? Like it's just.
Well, I feel like it's the same extra dimensional forces behind the scenes feeding off of, you know, fear. So now they're feeding off of the hope and then the disappointment. Like that's all just fuel for what the larger metagame is that's controlling this game.
It is also like just continuing to have that idea out there that like there's this idea amongst QAnon people that the real date of the inauguration is going to be this date, this day, this date. And so when it doesn't happen, there may be a riot at the Capitol. So we continue to have Cosentino wire facing inwards around the Capitol, right? It does feed into other narrative, like, you know, that makes it so that like the separation of the quote unquote government from reality just keeps getting farther and farther and farther.
Yeah. And what it does is it feeds the narrative that a savior is going to swoop down from a cloud and rescue us. So it keeps us from taking any action, from unifying and standing. That's what it does. It keeps us complacent, waiting to be rescued. It infantilizes us the same way the left narrative infantilizes us.
So let's borrow a phrase from Jen Psaki and circle back real quick to the volcano issue, and then we'll wrap the main part and go to the afterwards. So what's weird about this is it was in the news yesterday, but I felt somehow like I heard about it a couple days before. So I don't know if I was out. I have had some funny time anomaly things happen since I was in Austin, but I was like, wait a second, this story's old, but everybody was reporting it like it was new yesterday. So I seemed to have I don't know, but I seemed to know about it 2 days before everybody else did. Or when I heard about it, I'm like, wait a second, I already heard about this 2 days ago. And it seemed to be happening at the time people were talking about it. So I don't know how that would be, but it's weird. But anyway, leper colonies.
Okay, so it doesn't surprise me because you have your own unique relationship with time, which is just getting more and more unique as the timelines diverge. And my first thought when I heard about it was they had to have planned this. They had to have engineered this explosion. So also the fact that you were tapping in was probably that you knew that this was going to happen.
Right.
Like, because that's just too coincidentally perfect to drive their forced passport narrative, right? To see this happen,
right.
To have this sort of organically happen at this exact moment is a little too perfect for their agenda. So I feel like it circles back to the weather engineering that they had to have made this happen.
Well, and totally, the only thing that probably scares people more than the idea of dying of a pandemic is of like suffocating based on like degraded oxygen or getting burnt by lava, right? Like those things sound far more terrifying, right? So it is very convenient. It's very, it's actually sick. It's fucking sick. And I think this is
to a whole new level of you, like this just ratcheted up as far as human
Yeah.
rights violation to a whole new level of disgusting.
like, what do we do now? If somebody is drowning and they send a lifeguard to catch them, the lifeguard asks before they pull them on the boat if you've been vaccinated, right? It does all this kind of stuff. And it's interesting. It reminded me like earlier, I guess last year, like we read that book. You know who the guy who wrote Way of the Peaceful Warrior, Dan, whatever, the gymnast. There was a second book he wrote that was less popular called The Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior, I think. And it was about his time with a female shaman in Hawaii who, right. And who took him to, who talked, from this, he learned about like what went wrong in Atlantis and Lemuria and whatnot, and how certain characteristics in humans had gotten out of balance, some to the technological scientific side, some to the spiritual side, and how that these falls and rises and falls of these civilizations are really more about the archetype of that kind of thing, right? But then also one of the things the shaman did with him as she was trying to help him to recover himself was take him to work in a leper colony, and she dropped him off there. Right. And he didn't catch leprosy. Right. And I guess Hawaii is a place that has more people. There still has some like areas where people who were ostracized a long time ago raise their families and this and that and whatever. So leper colonies still do exist. And also people go into them and they don't catch leprosy. Right. And that was like a major part of his sort of shamanistic journey from the brink of death back, right, was sort of like learning to not be afraid of people who are not only like different on the inside, but visibly different on the outside based on their health condition as well, which is a terrifying thing, right? And so when this came up, Laura and I were talking about how it's like that book, right? It's just like, like so these people, if they survive, now they're going to be left on the island and everyone else is going to be off the island. So it's literally a leper colony. But it's not a leper colony based on leprosy. It's based on nonsense. Yeah. Based on nonsense, right? So yeah, it's an interesting story. But the time anomaly I had with it, I had to fucking look up where St. Vincent even was. I wasn't even sure where St. Vincent was. Isn't St. Vincent like St. Vincent like a hospital in almost every city? So there's that mind control with it as well, right?
I just went to the musician.
That right? There you go.
That was my first thought.
But I mean, just like the idea, like St. Vincent sounds like a hospital. And so this medical situation and whatever, it's just
interesting to know what St. Vincent is a saint of.
Let's look it up. Let's see. Who is St. Vincent?
I hope it's lepers.
Let's see. Who is St. Vincent? Okay. Oh boy. So yeah, there's a musician, Annie Clark, known as St. Vincent. I did never heard of that until you just said it. Who is that? Isn't going to work. Who is?
What is she the saint of?
Well, who is St. Vincent? I'm doing it like what is, okay, there's St. Vincent de Paul Society.
That's a great thrift store. Let's
see what that is. Is a network of friends inspired by gospel values. Who is Saint? What is the Saint Vincent?
You have to figure out what it was sainted for.
Yeah. Saint Vincent de Paul. Saint Vincent de Paul.
Here it is.
The patron saint of charitable societies. He was born in 1581, April 24th. So this is just his Saint Vincent de Paul. It was French saint, founder of the Congregation of the Missions, for preaching missions to the peasantry and for educating and training a pastoral clergy. The patron saint of charitable societies, Saint Vincent is primarily recognized for his charity and compassion for the poor, though he is also known for his reform of the clergy and for his early role in opposing Jansenism.
What's that?
Let's see what Jansenism is. Jansenism in Roman Catholic history is a controversial religious movement in the 17th and 18th centuries that arose out of the theological problem of reconciling divine grace and human freedom. So it's exactly what this is.
Freedom. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So that's interesting. Yeah. But this is a coded event on many levels. This is like one of these, like, what the fuck? All right. So let's wrap up the public portion of this. it was pretty spicy. So we'll have to see what happens. We may have to put this, we may have to play capture the flag for people to find the main part of the show, but we're going to move over into Afterwords for patrons. You can go to patreon.com/Dani Katz or patreon.com/Off-Planet Media to get Afterwords. We're going to, I have a little clip I'm going to play that goes to some of this political quackery, machinations, nonsense, narrative providing blah, blah, blah that we've talked about. And then we're also going to do a little esoteric geography.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, and also I have a thing. I'm doing an online workshop April 22nd, The Language of Sovereign Authority. It has nothing to do with maritime law. It's transmuting the slave patterns in our everyday lexicon. I'm still deciding if it's going to be 2 hours or 3 hours. So just kind of save the date. It's either 12 to 2 Pacific time or 12 to 3.
When is the date? What's the date?
April 22nd.
April 22nd. Okay.
Yeah. And you'll be able to find the information on DaniKatz.com in just a couple days.
Okay, awesome. And I am settled and back to work. So if people would like nutrition consulting, life coaching, or any of that jazz, hit me up at emilycmoyer@protonmail.com, and website should be up next week as well, guys. So anywho, we will see you guys next time. Sayonara.